Today we're happy to have with us Eddie Campos. He's the current president of the Northwest Ohio Board of Realtors. He's been a licensed realtor since 2005 with RE/MAX. He's helped over 500 families in Northwestern Ohio buy and sell homes, totaling over $89 million in value. And a couple of facts about him. He graduated from Whitmer High School, so he's a West Toledo kid. Yeah. And he's been a professional drummer in a band since the age of 13. And I guess looking at you, maybe that's been like 5 years.
Yeah, 5 or 50, who can tell?
So why don't you just explain to start with, what is your job as a realtor on a daily basis?
Real estate is a much more complicated process than people really give it credit for, just like pretty much any other job. You know, setting this all up, there's a process for it that you and I don't have the skills for. So today especially, it's being able to help people maneuver through that process successfully. And there's a lot of factors. What does the other agent have to say? Who the seller is, who the appraiser is, who the inspector is. There's all of these factors involved that affect what happens to people. So when somebody were to ask, you know, Eddie, what if we have a problem with the inspection? What can we do? And that depends. Can we reduce the price? Can we ask them to fix it? Can we ask them to pay closing costs? Can we do a combination of all those things depending on the severity of the problem? Can we still pull out of the deal? If we pull out of the deal, do we get our earnest money back? So it depends becomes a phrase that comes out of my mouth pretty frequently. What we're just trying to do is go from that accepted offer all the way to the closing table as successfully and painlessly as possible. And it's just helping to maneuver through that process. So it's like a tree. And, you know, you go down one road and you have an inspection and that may change direction. Then you've got an appraisal and that may change direction. So, you know, it's just trying to help people achieve that dream and the goal of getting into their home successfully and as painlessly as possible.
So I guess it's somewhat interesting that you and I are both in the service industry.
Yeah.
I often get asked, well, why do you have to hire the attorney to handle my injury case? And you could handle it on your own.
Right.
And I basically tell them, yeah, you could, but I think I'm going to get you a whole lot more money and a whole lot better results. So
Sure.
My question to you is, why should I hire a realtor to list my home? I can just do it by myself.
Yeah, and it comes back to what you just said. You know, you can do just about anything yourself. We could set up this room and probably achieve this, but in how many hours and days, you know, is it going to take us to do that? And because of our years of experience, you know, I've got 19 years of experience in the business. I've seen the evolution of what's happened in real estate to be able to help people maneuver through those things that are a little treacherous, you know, and trying to understand what does it mean if we accept an offer that's over list price. Is the appraiser going to appraise the home? So what do you do then? And can the buyer do anything else to be able to help us get through that? Can they help us pay for that? Today, it's more likely than ever. 10 years ago, the seller would just have to reduce their price because the buyer always has the option to walk away at that point.
So what you're basically saying is, wow, you sold the home for $20,000 over list price, but if the appraiser doesn't appraise it correctly,
Right.
the deal's done.
Yeah, they have the final word of what our house is going to sell for. So I have an opinion what the price is, the seller has an opinion what the price is, but the appraiser who's going to appraise the home for the bank, they're the ones that have the final word.
Okay, so let's say I want to sell my home. I contact you, I hire you. How are you going to help me maximize the sales price?
There's a lot of things we can do. So it depends on the condition of the home, so we'll start there. But the basic things that anybody can do right away is to clean and organize. So quickly start thinning out your closets, clean out the basement, clean out the garage, make sure the attic starts getting cleaned out because a lot of people forget they have stuff up there. Make sure the house is ready to go. It's in show condition, right? Make sure that the beds are made. So because we're going to bring in a professional photographer to be able to take photographs. I'm going to do a 360 tour, which is going to really highlight all the rooms, good and bad. And then, you know, my experience says that anytime we have a professional photographer in the room and somebody says, you know what, I don't really want to do all that, Eddie. I don't want to have to clean, you know, my house is what it is. Somebody's probably going to do, you know, some things to the house anyway, so what does it matter? And then we take the pictures and they see what it looks like. And the picture just magnifies everything that could be a possible problem with the house, or magnifies how beautiful it is. It's been many times when somebody has said that to me, that after they've looked at the pictures, they thought, okay, can we delay this? I'm going to need to get somebody in here. So just cleaning and organizing does a world of good, even if your house isn't very well updated. So the next step we do is when we go through, we do kind of an evaluation of the home to determine where are we at in being prepared to go to the market. So the listing appointment I was just on last night, very talented young people, which does not normally happen these days. They don't really have the skills to do that. And in their case, it was all YouTube videos that helped them achieve some of these things. And they're pretty big projects that they tackled. But when I tell you that the house looks like it just came out of a Pottery Barn catalog, it was just that clean, just that beautiful. The colors were right. Everything made sense. So in that case, there's not a whole lot to do. If I have someone who probably has some maybe multicolored homes, so neutral tones are very popular. Tones that are easy to be able to decorate around, one color throughout the home, or at least within the same color family. Those things are really important to a buyer because they're going to grade your home on two scales. Is it closer to a foreclosure, or is it closer to new construction? So the closer we can get to new construction, the better. So if we're not quite there, then the next thing I do is I bring in a professional stager to be able to help give us some feedback of what is the buyer going to be looking at when they come into the house. How are they going to view this? So if they were to come into this room, they'd probably say, Eddie, let's make sure all the chairs are around this table. Let's move the mini fridge out to another room. Let's move the shelf out so that people can walk around easily. So she's going to try to identify some things that just, it may not be a problem, but we just want to make that presentation as great as possible. It's like going to Mancy's or J. Alexander's or going to, any other fast food restaurant. It just isn't, aesthetically as nice. So we're trying to make that as attractive as possible. And if at all possible, all we want to do is we want to achieve an emotion out of the buyer when they come in so that and it kind of takes their breath away. And there's a wow factor to the home. If we can get that emotion to happen, that's going to be the home that's going to get a lot of attention.
I've always heard that the best time to sell is in the spring and the most homes are on the market. Is that true or not true anymore?
That depends. So right now, yes. So for a couple of reasons. So our inventory has been really struggling to get homes onto the market. So the Northwest Ohio territory involves 10 counties. And through winter and now the first 3 months of the year, our inventory has been anywhere in the 700 to 800 range, which is not a lot of homes. There are some subdivisions that have 800 homes in them. So when you're talking about 10 counties, that's not a lot. And to give you another comparison, a balanced market for buyers and sellers is approximately 3,000 homes just in Lucas County and Upper Wood County, not 10 counties. So right now, any homes that we get to the market is a benefit. And right now, because there are so few homes on the market, it's really causing a lot of attention for buyers to come out and see your houses. So any homes that I'm going to see right now, we're still getting multiple offers in many situations.
So you'd say that's still a very big seller's market?
Oh, absolutely. And we don't see that changing for probably another 4 to 5 years.
One of the issues they talked about interest rates. I remember a couple of years ago, around COVID time, the interest rates were unbelievably low.
Yeah. It's almost free money.
Right. It was almost free money. So in a seller's market, how big of an issue is the interest rates?
I would tell you that it definitely affects it. I don't think that it squashes anything. It's really the inventory that makes the big difference. And so for people that don't really understand why the inventory levels are so low right now, it all goes back to when the Great Recession happened. Builders got themselves in a real big pinch because the banks were very liberal with their funds. They were able to give them all sorts of money to work with to develop a subdivision, to build homes, and they'd have 4, 5, 6 homes sitting. And then all of a sudden, when the market got cut, now all of a sudden those homes couldn't appraise. So then little by little, builders kept getting out of the business, whether they're forced through foreclosure or they just made drastic changes in their lifestyle and went into different careers because they just could not, there wasn't enough people to buy a home. So when you have a market that's like that and you take away the additional homes coming in that a builder would provide, and that happened for almost 10 years, now all of a sudden we're behind the eight ball. So nationwide, we're somewhere between 4 and 5 million homes behind, and that's not going to get made up overnight. And there's a lot of contributing factors to that problem, right? So not only are we behind the eight ball with the amount of homes, there's problems in trying to get land developed. So there's engineering issues, there's zoning issues. Trying to get the land is becoming scarce. There's not enough builders. There's not enough people getting into the trades. COVID caused all the prices to go up. I was explaining to one of your people here recently that I had a couple that I was working with, and we couldn't find the home they wanted. So we ultimately decided we're going to build. That happened right at the beginning of COVID. And we had a price of approximately $400,000. If we could pinch some things here and there, we probably could have gotten a lot less. By October, we're already at $450,000, closer to $500,000, because the price of product went up, the price of labor went up, and it was just much more difficult to make something happen. So that's also pushed things a little back as far as being able to get this inventory to replenish.
In a seller's market, when you see a deal, what percentage of deals blow up? I mean, is it like 2 or 3%, or it's pretty big?
No, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that because there's so many factors, right? We go back to, it could be the attitude of the seller, the buyer or listing agent, the inspector, the inspection, financing. So there are many factors. I would tell you right now, it wouldn't be unusual to see maybe 5 to 10% of those end up with some kind of problem. And sometimes it's just that the buyer gets cold feet. They got into a situation where they put multiple offers onto multiple homes and got denied, and then all of a sudden one comes up. It's like, oh, yeah, this is pretty good. Let's go for it. It's not the dream home, but it's good enough. And they get into it. It's like, do we really want to spend all this money on this home? It's not the home. It is a home. And then they'll find a way to be able to try to get out of the deal. And there are ways that people can do that without any, significant repercussions.
So in your industry, I'm assuming that people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So for anybody listening out there, what is the criteria that an individual should use when they're trying to pick their realtor to either represent them as a buyer or to represent them as a seller?
Yeah, that's a great question, and for me, being in the business and how I look at things, it's got to be someone that you could possibly find a referral from, some friend, relative that recently went through a transaction and had a good experience. Then from that point, it's now diving into that personal realtor's, history. What are their Google reviews? What are their Zillow reviews? What does their social media look like? Do they even have a social media process? How many years have they been in the business? You and I both know that, a first-year attorney does not operate the same as a 30-year attorney, and the same thing goes for any profession. So if somebody has more experience behind them, that'll tend to give them more abilities to be able to solve problems, because problems are going to happen.
And I also know that, like in your industry, there's people that it's their part-time job.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that, you would probably put that in the criteria too.
Yeah, again, it depends. There are some people that have started that are very successful these days that started in that part-time position. And I think what people don't understand, and this is a big misconception because of places like HGTV where they show the $1 million listings, and real estate is a tough business to be in. The failure rate is 87% in 5 years. And the biggest thing that most realtors don't appreciate when they get into it is how expensive it is, because you're an independent contractor. My signs, the paper I print an MLS sheet on, my business cards, my cell phone bill, the fuel that I'm spending. So there's a lot of expense that goes into it. So the colleges that are available for somebody to get their license, they're great at helping you get your license, but they're not necessarily helping you learn how to buy and sell homes and to guide people through that process. That's where the brokerage comes in. So, my brokerage, we have some fantastic people, John Mangus, Angela Decker, and Kathy Kuyat. John's been in the business 40-some years. Kathy's been in the business 45 years. Angela's been in the business probably a little less, like around 7 years, but she's got a tremendous amount of recruiting experience and business experience. She's got her degree and got her broker's license, and she's done a phenomenal job. And she'll be, slowly, taking over things as, everybody starts to retire. So when you look at, somebody's experience, it means a lot. And in our brokerage, we've got a lot of experience behind us.
You've kind of explained why you need a seller's agent. Why do you need a buyer's agent?
Today, especially, it is so difficult to try to make an offer happen. So right now, I'm in the process of helping someone write an offer. And in this particular case, the home does need some work. It's not a perfect home, but it's a good home. So that's something that could work to our advantage, because most people today don't have the time, they don't have the resources, they don't have the talent to be able to do some of these things. This is a bigger, more like a family home. So that means it's typically going to be a family with some kids. So guess what happens? 2-income household, so they're busy. Now you've got kids in soccer, gymnastics, choir, band, something. In my house, there's always something that's going on. I don't have the time to be able to do that. So if I have a project coming up, if I can't make the time, I'm going to need to use my financial resources to find somebody who can be able to take care of those things. So in this particular case, that house is going to need a little bit of attention. It's going to need paint throughout. It's going to need new flooring throughout. And it's probably going to need a kitchen sometime soon because it's very dated and they wanted something newer. That could work to our advantage because my people appreciate that kind of thing. They want to take on those challenges. I would tell you probably 70% of the people I work with as buyers, they just don't have the time to be able to do those kinds of projects. So we may have fewer people competing with us. But we still have to find out what the situation with the house is as best we can. So there's a fiduciary duty, to your client. So when I speak to the listing agent, he really can't tell me a whole lot unless his client has told him he can. So when it comes to the offer process itself, the first thing I'll do is I'll call him and say, do you have any other offers? And if you do, how many do you have? Are any of those cash offers? All of those play a role in what we would do if we decide to write an offer. The other thing is it priced competitively already, or is it priced at the top of the market? And if it's priced at the top of the market, we still got to go back and say, okay, well, how many offers do they have? Do they have 2? Do they have 10? And if they have 10, that generally is going to take the price up even higher. And if it takes up the price higher, what's going to happen? It could be an appraisal issue. So if there's an appraisal issue, does the buyer have the money to do an appraisal gap addendum? Well, Eddie, I don't know that I necessarily want to bid $450,000 on this $400,000 home. Well, this may be a situation to use an escalation clause and kind of like eBay, go up in increments over the next highest offer. I mean, just in the past 2 minutes that we've spoken, there's a lot of factors to take into account when you're going to write an offer. So you want somebody who's going to be able to help you maneuver through all that minutia.
So it sounds like you need somebody who's has the experience, and you need somebody who has some creativity to solve a problem.
Absolutely. And problem solving, just like with you, is a significant part of our business. And, problems are big and small, right? And it depends on how you want to look at those things. Are they a problem or are they a challenge? Is it just something we have to get through? Let's find out the best way to get through it.
I don't do real estate transactions, but do you need an attorney in a real estate transaction, and what's the why for your reason?
It is not an obligation. It's not mandatory for somebody to have an attorney. I strongly recommend that my clients have an attorney. One, I kind of treat it as an insurance policy because of all the things that are going on in a transaction. We don't know when a problem's going to pop up. Like, I've got a closing that's going to get ready to happen next week in Bowling Green. We got notification today that the VA loan that is financing the buyer, they had one little thing that they needed to get taken care of, and we thought we had a clear to close, but the title company didn't get the information correctly, so we truly didn't. So now we're all set to close next week, but we don't have a true clear to close just yet. Those kinds of things happen. Sometimes those can turn into a major problem, and if that happens, I want to make sure that we already have an attorney that's working with us, that knows the transaction, knows the people, understands the motivation, and can help guide us through that, because you and I both know there's a hard line of whether you're practicing real estate or you're practicing law. And I like what I do, so I'm not going to try to practice law and lose my license. So having an attorney available, I think, is critical to be able to help get through these processes. So if 10% of my transactions have a problem, that's not a bad, rate of issues to take care of. That's very manageable. But when they happen, you want to make sure that you've got somebody on your side to be able to get through those things.
So I'm looking at your website, and I see you have designations. Could you translate these into English?
Yeah.
I see you have an ABR/RESA, CSA, and an SRS. So what's that mean in English?
ABR is your accredited buyer representative. So I have additional education in regards to helping a buyer. I also have additional education into helping a seller. I have additional education when it comes to helping people stage their home. And I have additional education when it comes to helping seniors and people that are in the 55 plus category. All of those territories, all of those areas, they have special needs involved. So going back to your question of, when I'm hiring a real estate agent, Eddie, what are the things that I could be looking for? You start to see those letters behind somebody's name. That means that they've taken the additional steps to try to get more education to be the best agent they possibly can be.
I always like to ask people about their background, their journey, and their story. So why aren't you a drummer full-time versus why did you end up in real estate?
So I started by going into music education. And I just thought, I really love music. I really, really love music. That is truly my passion. And I really wanted to play. And I thought, well, this is a way I can do both. I can earn a living, I can have a family, and I could still play. My first year at Bowling Green State University, my percussion instructor, which you have to have when you have a major in music, was Dr. Wendell Jones, and I just loved him to death. And being a freshman, you unfortunately had the first classes of the day where the seniors had the last classes of the day. So we would start at 9 o'clock, and by the end of the semester, and then by the end of the year, my class kept getting later and later because he and I would talk so much. We would just really click, and we talk about music, and we talked a lot about attitude and how that affects the way you play and with other people. And we got to the end of the year, I did my final recital, and we had my last lesson, and he goes, Eddie, I want to have a heart-to-heart with you and just say that I think you're a fabulous musician. I think you've got the right attitude to do it, and if you really wanted to take the leap and go somewhere else that you could try to make some bigger achievements in music, I think you can definitely do that. But if you're going to stay around here, he goes, I know from talking to you, you're a family person. You love being with your family. You're not motivated to leave Northwest Ohio. I really think you could be a successful musician, enjoy your life, and not get into a situation where you start to struggle because now you're trying to put all of your eggs into the music basket. And he goes, and the last thing is, do you remember being in marching band when you were in high school? Do you really want to be teaching kids how to march 8 to 5 in 99-degree weather in August when everybody is still home? And he gave me some things to think about that I didn't even consider. I was just barreling forward to achieve this goal. And I took a step back and I thought, you know what? I don't know that I really want to do that. I want to play music, but I don't necessarily want to do that. So I made some changes. I decided that, maybe shifting into business was, made more sense. And then I started working at the same time, or I was working at the same time, with a local wholesale distributor. So we were selling kitchens and baths and vinyl siding and roofing and windows. So I really developed a huge education in the home improvement and new construction field. And that's where I was immersed for 11 years. And I really hit my head on the ceiling. And at the same time, I got into a position there that I just was not enjoying because it wasn't my personality, and that's credit and collections. I was very good at it, but I absolutely hated it. And it really started to affect my attitude and the way I felt and the way I was at home. And trying to figure out what I could do otherwise, real estate seemed to be the natural transition. And that's how I got into this. And I really wish I would have made that change 11 years earlier than when I did, but at least I still got here.
Every day, do you look forward to going to work?
Oh, I love it. I love it. So my wife did not used to like her old job. She liked what she did, and it was just okay. It was a job. And she would dread going to work at 8:30 on Monday, and she couldn't wait for 4:31 on Friday to come around. And it would be so funny. Sunday night we'd be getting ready to, get our stuff ready for the day and to start the week. And she goes, "Oh, I just hate going to work." And she would look at me. She goes, "You don't stop working." And I really don't. And you and I just had that discussion. You're going to be in the office this weekend. And I really don't. And you know what? I don't necessarily think of it as work. It's something I have to do. I enjoy working with people. I enjoy the people I'm with. I love being of service to people. There's a huge satisfaction of being able to help people through some of the most difficult things they can get through.
It's probably a good thing that you had the other job, because in comparison, you appreciate it a lot more.
Absolutely. And I was just telling somebody that, last night my day ended at 9:30, and it's like, it's just another day. I don't dread it. Fortunately, most of my kids are grown. I've got one that's graduating this year, and I've got another one that's a sophomore. And so we don't have the intensity that some families have with a lot of activities. My wife is very understanding. She's now in a new career that she does love, and she does work more, and now she understands why I work more. It's just what you do. I love it, and I want to be good at it, and I want to make sure that I can take care of my people, and that takes time. It's not there's no easy button in real estate.
So let's say I'm a buyer. Do you recommend that I get pre-approved for a loan?
Yeah, so it really comes down to whatever their needs are. But if they can't take care of the transaction, on a cash basis, then absolutely, that would be one of the things that you'd want to do. I would truly still want to meet with them, previous to them doing that. There's a lot of lenders out there. There's probably 4 or 5 that I work with on a regular basis. And it really comes down to trying to match the right person with the right lender. Attitude, what their personality's like. There's a lot of things that come into play. It's just a sense sometimes. Sometimes there are people that only want to work with someone who's female or male. So I need to listen to all those things. So you and I both are in situations where we got to be very attentive to our people's needs, and that means you got to close your mouth and listen a lot more. So once we can get a feel for that, then I think I can figure out who the right person is for them to connect with.
So is cash still king? If I come to you and say I can pay cash, does that give me a leg up in the transaction?
That depends. It depends on how big your offer is. Sometimes if somebody thinks that their cash offer is just going to be the best offer because it's cash, it depends. Sometimes the seller's attitude is like, I just want top dollar. Whether it's cash, a VA loan, FHA loan, or conventional, I don't care. I just want top dollar. With a cash deal, the reason that works so easily is most people don't get an appraisal when they're doing a cash deal. You're not waiting for finance contingencies to come through. So there's a lot of other factors that get pushed to the side that can make the transaction faster and easier. But conventional loans, there are lenders out there that can get them done in 2 to 3 weeks. So it's a matter of ordering your appraisal immediately, get your inspections order immediately, and then you're in a position to be able to crunch that time down where you can kind of get close to where a cash deal might be. You don't have to wait 4 or 6 weeks. You have the right lender, and if your clients respond to the lender in a timely fashion, so a perfect example would be, do you have student loans? Okay, were they in deferment? Are they coming out of deferment? So there's a lot of little pieces that they have to try to fill in and say things were taken care of. Sometimes there's an outstanding Dillard's bill that still shows up on their credit, but they've paid it. So now we need to get proof of that. The lender's going to be talking to them on a daily basis. Hey, I need this. Can you get this to me right away? As long as the buyer is responding quickly, the lender can go through those things very fast and make the transaction pretty easy.
So in the current Northwestern Ohio market, what do buyers want? Is it location? Is it the school system? Is it a specific neighborhood? What's the most important qualities currently in the market?
Most people come to me asking for a particular school system. The top 2 things that are on most people's list these days, especially coming out of COVID, home office space, outdoor entertainment. Swimming pools are bigger than ever. The cost of a built-in pool is extraordinary today compared to where it was 10 years ago. But the demand is huge. And I don't know what it quite is today because I haven't had someone ask for it. But it is a point where you're looking at $80,000 to $100,000 for a built-in swimming pool. That's great home entertainment. I remember as a kid, friends that had pools, they were the house. All the kids went to that pool. And as a parent, I would appreciate that. Is there a little more chaos and a little more activity? Absolutely. But you know where your kids are, you know who their friends are, and you can kind of keep an eye on things and make sure that you're grooming them to make good decisions. That would be important to me. And the maintenance isn't as terrible as most people think also.
One of the things I was always curious about are places where the school levies are going down to defeat. Isn't there a correlation between better schools and your house is worth a whole lot more money?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can look across the country and see that. It's universal. So when school levies don't pass, it's frustrating for me as a realtor because most likely those people decided to go there because of that particular school. And the other thing that I don't think people take into account is, schools aren't producing a product. They're not making money. They're not selling widgets. They're preparing our children to be adults, and there's a cost to do that. And the other thing that people don't understand is the state may say, listen, it costs $6,700 per student per year to teach your child to get to graduation in 12 years. But the state's only going to give you $3,000. It's up to you, the school district, to go back to the people in that county and get property taxes to be able to help offset that. That's really frustrating. They don't do that with a defense fund. They don't do that with all sorts of other funds. So it's just frustrating that education doesn't have a bigger priority when it comes to funding. So if people don't really appreciate that, they immediately think, well, all right, taxes are too high. Well, what are you getting for your money? It's like anything else. Are you getting a 1974 Pinto? Or are you getting a brand new Chevrolet minivan or whatever your taste is? So, the school system makes a huge impact on the saleability of your home, the value of your home. In a seller's market, values are going up everywhere. But you can look across the country and see where that's a significant part of what the value of the home is.
So if somebody came to you and say, hey, I'd like to buy a house a year from now, what homework should I do before I approach you to hire you, to help me find a home?
Yeah, so several things. I would still want to get together with them to have this kind of discussion to give them education, because education is power. We were just talking about schools, and the better the school, the better people are going to be when they get out into the real world. So I want to be able to give them some education, and I'd want them to start doing some homework. Please look me up, check out my Google reviews, go onto my website. I'll give you referrals to talk to people directly. I've got video testimonials on my YouTube page. Let's have you talk to the lender because there may be some things you need to correct. There are some people that don't understand that when they co-sign for their son's or daughter's student loan, that's still on their credit, and now that becomes an issue. So where they thought maybe they're going to be able to spend $250,000 or $350,000, they may not be able to do that because that student loan is still tied to them as part of their credit. That would be nice to know now instead of a year from now when you're saying, okay, let's go get in the car and let's start driving around. Well, time out. You can't even buy the home that you thought you were going to be able to buy. Let's try to take care of some of these things in advance. So that way, when we are going out, we're ready to make an offer as soon as you find the home that you think is best for you and your family.
You've given everybody a lot of information. If people still have questions, could you indicate what your web address is, what your phone number is, and what other sources of information do you have for interested potential buyers or sellers?
Yeah, thank you. So going to my Google page, so if you just go to Eddie Campos, you'll find me and you'll see a Google page for you to be able to find my reviews. If you go to Zillow, you'll find more reviews. My Facebook page, which is just Eddie J. Campos, me personally, and then my professional page is Eddie's Home Team on Facebook and on Instagram. My website is eddieshometeam.com. On LinkedIn, it's Eddie's Home Team. And you can find me just about anywhere. It's pretty hard not to find me these days.
Thanks for all the information, and anybody out there who really wants a fantastic realtor, either as a buyer or a seller's agent, I highly recommend that you give Eddie a call. Thanks for being here, Eddie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.